Today we're going to talk a little bit about appraisals, and I am going to go over NAR's consumer guide for appraisals. And so I'm going to read a lot of this to try to make sure that I cover all the bases. So let's jump in. What is an appraisal? An appraisal is an opinion on the home's market value that helps the lender ensure the purchase price is in line with the property value. The process is led by a licensed or certified residential appraisal, an independent third party engaged by the lender to provide a professional judgment on the home's value. Appraisers do not represent the buyer or the seller. Their sole duty is to come up with a fair and accurate valuation of the property. While all appraisals follow a set of standards, appraisals who are realtors have the added commitment to uphold the realtor code of ethics. So this consumer guide is really oriented toward residential property, but much of this stuff will also apply to commercial properties. There will be some slight differences. So for example, we are talking about residential stuff here, and you might have a commercial property, and a certified residential appraisal may not be the right person for that property. There are commercial appraisers. So let's move on. Do I have to get an appraisal? If you're taking out a mortgage on your new home, your lender will usually require you to get an appraisal to establish the loan-to-value ratio, or the percentage of the home's price that you'll borrow. Higher LTV ratios are riskier investments for the lender, so generally they look for LTV ratios of 80% or less. If you're paying cash, and the appraisal is not required, but it can still be useful to get a third-party opinion to make sure you aren't overpaying in certain instances. The requirement for an appraisal may even be waived by either the lender or the buyer to make the offer more attractive to the seller. Another thing I'm just going to mention as a side note here, there's also something called a broker opinion of value, or it might also be called a broker price opinion. And so that would be somebody like me, a real estate broker with experience in who can do a comparative market analysis or some sort of analysis to be able to present an opinion of value on the property. And those are often, sometimes you'll have people that want to do that. We usually do that like when we're doing a listing and we're setting a listing price or something along those lines. There may be other purposes where someone asks for it and they don't need an appraisal, they just need that. But they are different things. And I would say that an appraisal, let's say, has more authority. So, okay, moving on. What does an appraiser look at? Different appraisers may take different approaches by referencing databases such as MLSs, online platforms that compile home listings in a given market. Appraisers can use recently sold properties that have similar characteristics called comparables to help come up with a reasonable value for your home. They will also look at the home's condition, recent renovations, improvements, amenities, location, size, and other characteristics. Whatever method an appraiser uses, it must be independent, unbiased, and backed up by evidence. So again, this is really kind of the way that residential appraisals operate. Kind of traditionally, there are three main approaches for an appraiser to value a property, and so this is going to apply more to like commercial stuff. There is the market comps, which is what was just described here, where you look at other properties that are similar in the same area that have recently sold. There might also be the property replacement value, which would be what would it cost if we had to build this property from scratch with basically the same materials and get it in the same condition that this was in. What would that approximate cost be? And then the third way would be what is called the income approach. So for a commercial property, generally those they provide income. I mean, they are generally businesses and they are making money, and so the money that they make determines the value of the property, and so they will An appraiser will look at the income and they will estimate income in future years, and then they will use that to come up with a value of your property. Do appraisals take place in person? An appraisal may include an in-person visit, but it is not always required. In some instances, hybrid and desktop appraisals are used where appraisers collect data remotely and speak with reliable third-party sources familiar with the property and the surrounding area, such as current or former agents of the comparables being considered. Some of this is going to have to do with what the purpose of the appraisal is, and this is somewhat of a controversial issue right now. So for example, for a foreclosure, if something is going to go to the foreclosure auction, part of the process of that auction is the city, the state, the county, whoever is doing the auction, they have to do an appraisal of the property as part of that. But those generally are not the same kind of appraisals. Lots of times they're what we call a drive-by appraisal, where they drive by to more or less make sure that the property is still there, that have some general idea of the condition of the property, but they don't really go inside or talk to anybody or anything else. But one of the other things that is really growing right now is these, I think they called it a desktop appraisal, where the appraisers are generally using only online sources to come up with their appraisal opinion. And that we seem to be moving in that direction. A lot of appraisers do not agree with this. They feel like they really need to do more than that, but it does seem to be moving in that direction. So those are becoming more and more common. And I don't know. I mean, there are some people that are looking at AI to do appraisals. I don't think that those are allowed at this point. I think that there's some potential problems with that, but I guess that's a topic for a different video. Is my agent allowed to communicate with the appraiser? Yes, your agents and others involved in the transaction are allowed to communicate with the appraiser and provide property information. However, it is not only unethical but also unlawful for agents to intimidate, persuade, or bribe an appraisal to influence the valuation, and an appraiser may not disclose confidential information at any time. Most of the time, they tell me when they're going to do an appraisal and I know about it. There are times where I only find out after the fact and they've already done it. I have generally had a very warm relationship with the appraisers when they come in, and they generally are very reasonable. I have, depending upon the property, where there's something where I thought it might be hard to get comps, or I thought that, you know, something might need a little extra detail, I brought extra information, I brought other comps, and generally it's been very friendly, very professional. They'll look at them and like, you know, yeah, this one might be a good comp that I could use, or no, this one would not. So you can talk to them. What happens if the appraised value is different from the purchase price? A mismatch between the home's appraised value and the purchase price can impact how much your lender allows you to borrow for your mortgage. You can negotiate to include an appraisal contingency, a condition that the value of the price must align in order for the transaction to continue in your purchase agreement. But an appraisal contingency is not required. So this has to do really with your purchase contract. And so that would be something for the buyer to consider if you want to have a contingency for an appraisal. Generally what I do in most of my things is it's like, if the lender requires it, then we do it. If the lender does not require it, then we don't. But generally, it is contingent on getting financing. So if the lender gets it and they say, hey, these don't line up, and you can't get the financing that you need to complete the transaction, you can null the contract. Will I receive a copy of the appraisal? Yes. The Federal Equal Credit Opportunity Act requires lenders to automatically send you a free copy of the home appraisals and all other written valuations on the property after they are completed. However, there is a but. There's a big but you need to listen to. If you are granted an appraisal waiver by your lender is not required to send you a copy of the valuation report. So that's just one thing when you're working with your lender. If they're asking you to sign a waiver like that, you may just want to talk to them about that. If you wanted a copy of it, then you may want to make sure that you just, let them know that, and more than likely they're happy to go whichever way it is, but just so you know. And can I request that the appraiser correct or update the appraisal? If you believe the appraiser did not consider important information about the property or available comps, you can request a reconsideration of value to ask that the appraiser reevaluate their analysis. Your lender will provide instructions on how to initiate an ROV, and your agent can help you gather the appropriate information to complete that request. If you believe an appraiser has reached an inaccurate or biased decision, you can also file a report with your state or federal regulatory agents, including the Appraisal Subcommittee, Appraisal Complaint National Hotline, or a local nonprofit fair housing organization. So I'm going to put a link to this in the description below, and if you go to this consumer guide, it will have the links in there where if you need access to those things. I will say my experience has been is that most appraisers are very professional, very well-trained individuals, and they really are trying to do an excellent job, but they're, sometimes you make a mistake, that we're all human, you can make a mistake. And like everybody else, you have some who are really, really great at their job, but there will be some who maybe aren't really great at their jobs. I have seen some appraisals that are really, really bad. Most of them are great. I'm not, no disparagement at all, but I guess the only point there is that if you don't get the result that you expected, it probably is a good idea to go through and just check and make sure that the facts are correct. You're all basing them on the same thing, and just kind of review it and make sure that everything looks okay. And we are going to wrap it up. That's it. Once again, I'm going to put this in the description. I also, if you have any other questions about real estate, feel free to put in a comment. If you're an appraiser, if you're a lender, if you're another real estate broker, and you have comments that you would like to make, I appreciate any information that you all might also like to share. And also, if you are looking for other information on real estate, you might go through some of my other videos. I have a lot of videos there, and there may be something that will answer your question. And that may be it. I am David McCoy. I am based here in Louisville, Kentucky. My company is Otimo Properties. I do commercial, I do a little residential, and I do global. And I am licensed in Kentucky and Indiana. If you have questions or comments, please let me know. If you found this useful, if you don't mind giving me a like or share it with a friend who you think if they might get use out of that too. Also, if you want to know about other real estate topics or things coming up, you might consider subscribing. And I guess that about wraps this up. So have a fantastic day, and I will talk to you next time. Thanks for watching.